It's wonderful to come onto the stage after so many articulate and witty and brilliant people, and there'll be a lot more of that at Hay in the spring. I'm an historian. I generally write about empire, slavery, racism, colonial genocide, and occasionally when I think that's a bit heavy, I lighten things up by writing about the First World War and the Victorian slums. The long and time-honoured tradition at spoken words events like this is that at this point in the evening, with so many big ideas are being discussed, you normally want to lighten the mood. Well, obviously the people behind Hay and 5x15 have decided to throw away that convention this evening and put me at this point in proceedings. We are determined that you don't obviously leave with a spring in your step or an optimistic mood, and I accept the challenge. So I'm grateful to be given these 5 minutes to suck all the hope out of the room. And ironically, I had actually written an optimistic, upbeat, positive, hilarious 5 minutes for this point in the evening. But for some reason, as a BBC presenter, I find myself in a strangely political mood this evening for some reason. So I ripped up those hilarious 5 minutes of upbeat humour, and I want to talk about politics. My wild ideas tonight are wild political ideas. It's that we recognise that we have slipped into an age of wild ideas, ideas about people and money and markets that were once on the wildest fringes of the most extreme philosophies that have now been normalised. We've become so used to them, we've forgotten just how wild, how outrageous they are. And this is the perfect place to discuss those wild ideas and how normalised they've become, almost in the shadow of Grenfell Tower. But when that tower was built, council housing in Britain was so successful that delegations from other nations would come here to see how we'd done it, how, with lots of mistakes along the way, we turned housing from a commodity and into a right. And I was brought up in an estate just like Grenfell, but 300 miles to the north. It used to be a wild idea that we would tolerate rampant inequality that we see in the Britain of 2023. It used to be understood that in the age of consensus and distribution that the bonds that hold societies together fray if the rich live economically in another world from the poor. And in the early 70s, when I was a child and I first came to this country, Britain was, and we have forgotten this fact almost completely, Britain was one of the most equal of all the developed nations in the world. Right now, in 2022, we are either the second most equal society, Bulgaria, according to some metrics, manages to favour the rich and the property more than we do, or we have overtaken Bulgaria. The statisticians and the social geographers have yet to determine which. So my wild idea is really simple. It is, as I said, that we recognise that we've normalised, internalised crazy wild ideas. Wild ideas like homelessness and poverty in this, the sixth richest nation on earth. Crazy ideas like the 50 years mortgage. Crazy ideas like the studio flat, the bedsit, rebranded to sound slightly cooler. Wild ideas like giving away billions to kickstart the economy to exactly the rich demographics who we know will not spend that money, will not inject that money into the economy, but will save it because they spend the least, because they need to spend the least. And then there's the wildest idea of them all, the idea that talking about this, that recognizing any of this, that to do so, even in an otherwise fun evening right at the end in a way that's a bit of a bummer, is talking down the country. It is, in the great new pejorative, declinism. To talk about the wildest ideas from the wildest extremes of economic theory that are tearing us apart as a people. To do that is in its own way a wild idea, because it's what people do when they want a fairer, better, more united society, the society that we actually were in the early 70s when I got off a plane at Heathrow and began my life in this country. It's now over to Natalie Hayes to desperately, perhaps futilely, try to save the evening. This is what happens if you invite scholars of slavery into evenings like this. Thank you very much.